Imagine standing trackside in Bahrain. 20 of the most insane machines on Earth are lined up, engines screaming. But look at the 9th row. There's Lewis Hamilton, buried in 17th. Ahead of him, the fastest guys in the world. When those 5 red lights blink out, something impossible happens. Hamilton doesn't just start, he explodes. He launches with such sheer violence he has to swerve just to avoid smashing into the car in front. He blows past George Russell's Mercedes like it's stuck in reverse. He glides around Max Verstappen. By turn 1, Hamilton, who started near the back, is leading the pack. It looked ridiculous. While he was flying, Lando Norris's McLaren just sat there for 10 seconds like someone forgot to turn it on. This wasn't luck. It was a technical ambush 18 months in the making. To understand why everyone else looked like they were standing in wet cement, we have to talk about a massive rule change. For years, F1 cars had a digital safety net called the MGU-H. It was an electric motor that kept the turbo spinning at 100,000 RPM even when the driver wasn't on the gas. You wanted power? You got it instantly. No lag, no drama, but the FIA cut that safety net to save money and attract new brands like Audi. Now we're back to raw physics. Without that motor, drivers have to generate boost themselves. It's like trying to start a campfire by blowing on a tiny ember. They have to hold the engine at 13,000 RPM for 10 agonizing seconds on the grid, just praying the turbo wakes up. If you don't time it perfectly, or if your engine isn't breathing right, you're a sitting duck. Oscar Piastri described the new procedure as a recipe for disaster. And watching Norris stand still while the Ferraris flew past, you can see he wasn't exaggerating. This is where Ferrari's secret genius kicked in. While rivals were mourning their electric motors, Ferrari and their partners at Garrett Motion went small. Garrett isn't your average parts supplier. They have a massive aerospace heritage. They build components for fighter jets that have to survive extreme altitudes and pressures. For this new engine, they used exotic materials like Inconel, a nickel-chromium alloy that stays strong even when it's glowing red hot. We're talking about exhaust gases that rival the temperature of flowing lava. But the real win wasn't just the materials, it was the size. Think of a heavy playground merry-go-round. A huge iron one takes forever to get spinning. That's the Mercedes approach, a big turbo for max power but massive lag. Ferrari chose a tiny turbine wheel. It has less rotational inertia, which is just a fancy way of saying it's lighter and takes less energy to move. The regulations allow the turbo inlet to be between 95 and 105 millimeters. While Mercedes chased the 105mm limit for raw horsepower, Ferrari stayed right at 95. While the Mercedes guys are still blowing on their campfires waiting for boost, Ferrari's turbo is already screaming at full pressure. They traded a bit of top-end brute force for lightning-fast reflexes, and in a sport where races are won in the first 200 meters, that reflex is everything. And it's not just the size, it's where they put it. For a decade, Mercedes ruled with a split turbo, half at the front of the engine, half at the back, connected by a long shaft. It was brilliant for cooling, and everyone copied them. Everyone except Ferrari. They stubbornly kept their turbo as one compact unit tucked inside the engine's V. At the time, people thought Ferrari was just being behind the times. Then, the FIA dropped a bombshell. A new rule that says the two halves of a turbo can't be more than 175 millimeters apart. Just like that, the legendary Mercedes design became illegal. While teams like McLaren and Mercedes were scrambling to redesign their entire engine architectures from a blank sheet of paper, Ferrari didn't have to change a thing. They already had 10 years of institutional knowledge building the exact layout the rules now required. They weren't just prepared. They were the only ones who didn't have to start over. We saw the results in George Russell's telemetry. He let slip that he had to downshift all the way to first gear in turn 1, a corner usually taken in third, just to keep his big turbo from falling asleep. Ferrari. They were gliding through in second gear. Their smaller turbo stays awake at lower speeds, so the car is always ready to pounce. But here's the kicker. There's a sneaky rule that says the electric motors can't help the car until it hits 50 kilometers per hour. That means the first 2 seconds of a race are pure internal combustion. No batteries, no hybrids, just engine and turbo. In that narrow window, Ferrari's hardware delivers max torque, while the others are still lagging. By the time the electric power finally kicks in, Hamilton is already 3 car lengths ahead. This smooth power also saves the tyres. When you have a massive turbo, the power hits the rear wheels like a sledgehammer. It causes the tyres to spin, which generates heat, which kills the grip. Ferrari's power delivery is calm and linear. Over a 57-lap Grand Prix, that's the difference between winning and watching your tyres turn to dust. Trackside observers even noticed a difference in the sound. While other cars had a misfiring, stuttering effect when accelerating out of corners, signs of an engine struggling to find its rhythm, the Ferrari sounded smooth and composed. Ralf Schumacher called it a huge advantage that will show up in tyre management late in the race. The best part of this story isn't the metal though, it's the politics. A year ago, Ferrari boss Fred Vasseur sat in an F1 commission meeting and warned the other teams that these new starts were going to be a mess. He literally told them they should change the rules because it wouldn't look good for the sport. The other bosses, thinking they could out-engineer the problem, laughed him out of the room. So, Vasseur went back to Maranello and told his engineers to lean into the chaos. He didn't just build a car to fit the rules, he built a car to exploit the arrogance of his rivals. When the rivals finally saw the Ferraris rocket away in Bahrain, they panicked. They begged for a rule change on safety grounds, claiming the starts were too unpredictable. Vasseur's response was a masterclass in paddock swagger. He blocked every single proposal. He basically said, "I warned you 12 months ago, you told me to go away, and now I'm going to use the advantage I spent millions developing." He even told the media, "If you're scared, start from the pit lane." It's the kind of ruthless leadership Ferrari hasn't seen in years, and it has clearly energized the entire team. Now, this gamble does have a downside. Small turbos struggle in thin air. At the Mexican Grand Prix, which sits over 2,000 meters above sea level, the air is 25% less dense. A small turbo has to spin much faster to move the same amount of air, which puts massive stress on the bearings. In the past, this has caused Ferrari's engines to literally explode or forced them to dial back the power just to survive. On power tracks like Monza or Spa, where you spend ages at full throttle, Mercedes might still have the upper hand. They have the big lungs for the long runs, but Ferrari has bet that most races are won in the corners and off the line. They've traded brute force for drivability. They've built a car that works with the driver instead of fighting them. Yet whether this small turbo strategy carries Lewis Hamilton to his 8th world title is the big question hanging over the paddock. The first true test is just days away at the Australian Grand Prix in Melbourne. Albert Park is a street circuit full of short bursts and medium-speed corners, the perfect playground for a fast spooling turbo. If we see 4 Ferrari-powered cars, Hamilton, Leclerc and the Haas cars, all leapfrog the field at the start, the internet might actually break. Will the hardware advantage hold up over a full season, or will the big turbo teams find a software fix to bridge the gap? One thing is for sure, you can't shrink a turbocharger with a laptop. This is a battle of hardware, and for now, Ferrari is the only one holding the winning hand. Subscribe and stick around. We'll be breaking down the telemetry and the fallout from the first race the second the checkered flag drops.